Chapter 1824. Phew. Thank you, Mr. Zhang Liang. We will definitely repay the kindness of the Confucian school in the future. Seeing this, Old Man Ban and the others were overjoyed and bowed to Zhang Liang to express their gratitude. If the Confucians were willing to let Tianming enter the Sage Manor, they would definitely be able to get closer to each other, and their alliance would become even stronger. The great Qin Empire is our enemy, so there's no need to thank me, Zhang Liang said with a fake smile. However, Zhang Liang wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He wanted to say that he had been forced to agree to Dustless's conditions. If he refused Dustless's conditions, it would cause unnecessary trouble. If he couldn't even meet this basic condition, how could they still be considered allies? If this kind of small matter was not handled properly, the relationship between the allies could be broken. It was even possible for them to part ways and become strangers in the future. Thank you, Mr. Zhang Liang. Seeing Zhang Liang's hidden bitter-gourd face, Dustless felt great in his heart. Mr. Dustless must be joking. If anything bad happens to the Confucian school, we will need your help. Zhang Liang's expression was well hidden, and it was impossible to see any emotional fluctuations. Of course. Don't worry, Mr. Zhang Liang. If it is within my power, I will not refuse, Dustless said with a perfunctory smile. In truth, there was only one reason why he had gone through so much trouble to sneak into the Confucian school. Chu Nangong. In his mind, he would suddenly think of an old man who was over 70 years old. On the surface, this person had a benevolent countenance and was very kind. He had the appearance of a good old man, but in fact, he was very shrewd and extremely eccentric. Dustless had come to this world for another important thing in Chu Nangong's hands, the Yellowstone Heavenly Book. And it was during this period of time that Chu Nangong, Li Si, and Fu Su had paid a visit to the Confucian school. Normally, this old fellow was extremely elusive, so it was rather troublesome to find him in the vast Mulberry Sea city. Thus, Dustless chose to sneak into the Confucian school early and wait for Chu Nangong to come to him. This was the best opportunity to seize the Yellowstone Heavenly Book. Sage Manor. In the Sangxi region, the Sage Manor's scenery was definitely one of the best. The Confucian school emphasized enjoyment. The mountains were limpid and the water was clear. There were pavilions everywhere. Creak. The back door was suddenly pushed open, and several figures entered one after another. Without exception, all of them were wearing the gifts of the Confucian school. This person was none other than Dustless, Xiaoyu, Tianming, Zhang Liang, and the others. However, they had most likely changed their names. Before joining the Confucian school, Dustless had changed his name to Zichen, while Xiaoyu and Tianming were Ziyu and Ziming respectively. I hope these three fellows don't cause any big trouble. Otherwise, given the status of the Confucian school of thought, it would be terrible. Zhang Liang was actually quite worried. There was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. The news of him sneaking into the mechanical city of the Mo clan and helping the Mo clan had probably spread throughout the entire Qin kingdom. At this moment, if the Confucian school were to cause any major trouble and fall into the hands of others, Yingzheng would probably immediately raise the butcher knife to slaughter the Confucian school. Hey, you're already so old. Aren't you ashamed to go to school with us? Tianming looked at Dustless with widened eyes. He was quite jealous. Some people looked dignified no matter what clothes they wore, while others looked like idiots no matter what clothes they wore. The current Dustless was wearing a Confucian robe, and his temperament immediately changed. Originally, Dustless's appearance was close to androgynous, and after a bit of dressing up, it was even harder to tell if he was a man or a woman. The scholarly little sage manor that he was in had already been labeled as a scholar. Combined with Wu Chen's ethereal temperament, he more or less gave off the feeling of a great scholar. On the other hand, Tianming looked like an idiot. Because his clothes were too wide, they almost drooped on his body. Xiaoyu's shoulders and height were slightly better than Tianming's, but Tianming's robe directly dragged on the ground. You guys, be careful. Zhang Liang looked at the three lazy people and suddenly lost confidence in his heart. Dustless, Xiaoyu, and Tianming were all wanted criminals. Almost every day, a large number of ordinary people would gather in front of their arrest warrants, and even the people of the Confucian school would gather. If they were discovered by the Qin Kingdom's soldiers, the Confucian school would definitely be sent to hell. You guys go back and rest for a while. I heard that young Master Fu Su will be coming soon. Tianming and Xiaoyu, you two don't come out for a while. Zhang Liang raised his voice, and there was a hint of warning in his tone. Then why didn't you restrict him? Tianming pointed at Dustless and complained with great dissatisfaction, I'm the big son of the Mo family. The dignified big brother of the Mo family is restricted. This guy has no power and no influence, but nothing happened to him. It's not fair. Where did this kid get so many words from? Dustless shook his head and left. Following Zhang Liang's guidance, he went straight to a place not far away to rest. The world of adults was not understood by little kids, and it was impossible for them to integrate into the same topic. I don't know when that Chu Nangong will come. Hearing that Fu Su was coming to the Sage Manor, Dustless was quite happy. Without a doubt, this sudden visit was definitely not a good thing. Without a doubt, they were definitely here to cause trouble for the Confucian school. Dustless still remembered that there was a woman called Gongsun Linglong, and Chu Nangong was also in the queue, as was Xing Hun from the Yinyang school. After snatching the Yellowstone Heavenly Book from Chu Nangong, Dustless would immediately retreat. As for Tianming and Xiaoyu, there was no need for them to meddle in other people's business. After all, it had nothing to do with them. Chapter 1825. Time flew by, and it was already the next morning. Perhaps it was because Zhang Liang had informed everyone in advance, but no one cared about the 3 extra students from the Confucian school. Not many people cared about Xiaoyu and Tianming. Dustless, on the other hand, had caused quite a stir. As for the specific reason, he himself did not know. However, it was not until the morning class that Dustless realized why he had attracted so much attention. You look like you're full of wisdom, but you can't even recognize a single word. You can't even write a single word? Faced with such a question, Dustless wanted to cry but had no tears. He was even worse than Tianming. At least this guy could recognize a few words, but Dustless could not even read Xiaozhuan, let alone write it. The thoughts of the ancients are really troublesome, especially the Qin's Xiaozhuan. Because Dustless was too strange, Fu Nian, who came to teach the class, was very angry. This guy was so angry that he made Dustless stand outside as punishment. Tianming, who was supposed to be punished, was now Dustless's turn. He was also called the King of the Bottom. If it was in the past, Dustless would have turned a deaf ear to such a ridiculous punishment. However, now that he still needed to stay in the Confucian school, it would be a tragedy if he was expelled. Dustless had no choice but to use his clone to deal with Fu Nian while he went out to have fun. The scenery in Shanghai is not bad. Let's go out for a walk. Just as Dustless was about to sneak out from the back door, an unexpected figure suddenly appeared from the back door. She obviously knew Dustless and just nodded slightly before leaving. Isn't this Shirlan? Staring at the girl who brushed past him, Dustless was somewhat surprised. He followed her line of sight and saw Shirlan carrying an exquisite wooden bucket, similar to a lunchbox in the future. A strong fragrance came from it. She was probably here to deliver food to the Confucian students. Due to the Confucian school's belief that a gentleman should stay away from the kitchen, it had always been the kitchen's and that was responsible for providing food to the little Sage Manor, and Shirlan was the kitchen's errand boy. Shirlangu. No, you brat, stop right there. Dustless shouted loudly. Then, he realized that he had said something wrong and quickly changed his words. He turned into a breeze and chased after her. Now, Shirlan was disguised as a man. She was a handsome young man through and through. Shirlan just quietly looked at Dustless, who was blocking in front of her. Her face was calm, and her breathing was even. She looked very calm, but there were no ripples in the depths of her eyes. There's something wrong with you, kid. Staring at Shirlan, Dustless said meaningfully, you didn't even greet me when you saw me. Are you treating me like heir? Salute? You're not an official or a noble, so what's the point of bowing? It was rare for Shirlan to open her mouth, so she asked calmly, I feel that you are very strange, blocking other people's path for no reason. If there is nothing else, please move aside. Hee. Hearing this, Dustless just smiled faintly and said, how can it be an unintentional mistake? Don't you feel that you are too calm in front of your customers? Confucian scholars are your boss's frequent customers. At the very least, you should be more respectful to me. What are you trying to say? With a rare frown, Shirlan asked puzzledly. She keenly sensed that Dustless's words had a hidden meaning. Don't you think it's strange that a waiter who does odd jobs is too calm in front of his employer, and an employer who is deliberately looking for trouble? If you were shopkeeper Ding now, you might have bowed and apologized. But your unshakable attitude will easily arouse other people's suspicion. Dustless said with a smile. His eyes were full of ridicule. Boring topic. Hearing this, Shirlan's face changed slightly. She took a detour and left. She suddenly felt that it made sense. Facing a person whose status and identity was infinitely higher than her expression didn't change at all. She didn't even care. Wasn't this full of flaws? Sometimes, a flawless plan was full of flaws. This guy, Shirlan turned her head and glanced at the smiling Dustless. She suddenly labeled him as a dangerous person. Even though Dustless looked harmless just now, Shirlan felt inexplicably nervous when talking to him. She had never felt this way before. His clear eyes, which seemed bored and lazy, were terrifying as if they could see through people's hearts. Don't be in a hurry to leave. I still have something to tell you. Dustless pulled Shirlan's little hand like a ghost. He leaned close to her ear and blew a breath of hot air. He said, I have a friend who has some connections in the Mirage. He invited me to go up as a guest. Do you want to go? The Mirage? You mean the Mirage? Hearing this, Shirlan's heart trembled violently. A trace of disgust and hatred flashed in the depths of her bright eyes. She immediately noticed that Dustless had pulled her hand and touched it twice without leaving a trace. Shirlan immediately broke free. Don't try to scare me. The Mirage is a place that only those big shots can go up. You are just a powerless Confucian disciple. What kind of backing do you have? Liar. Do you think that you are the head of the Confucian school? It is understandable that he was invited to the Mirage. Shirlan coldly refused, but her quick-witted eyes were rolling around, extremely bright. This cunning little girl. Seeing this, Dustless couldn't help but smile. He smiled but didn't say anything. After carefully analyzing the meaning behind her words, one would realize that although Shirlan rejected him on the surface, she was actually secretly questioning who Dustless knew. Still trying to trick me. This little girl is a liar. She thinks too highly of herself. Dustless rolled his eyes. He naturally understood the meaning behind Shirlan's words. Chapter 1826. Tsk. I won't tell you this. All in all, you only need to know that I can enter the Mirage at will. I have a powerful backer. Wu Chen shrugged his shoulders, beaming with joy and complacency. After that, he took out an invitation card that was similar to an invitation letter. This is, sure enough, after seeing the special invitation card, Shirlan's pupils suddenly shrank. She clearly found that the last person who wrote the invitation card was Yun Zhongjuan. Do you know Yun Zhongjuan? Shirlan asked suspiciously. She stared at Dustless from head to toe. Except for his handsome face and unique temperament, there seemed to be nothing special about him. How could he know a big shot like Yun Zhongjuan? He was the owner of the Mirage. Of course I don't know him. Dustless shook his head and said with a smile, however, I know a friend. His family is in the business of medicinal herbs and is often responsible for delivering goods to the Xinglu building. He picked up the invitation card in his hand and said, only with this can you enter the Xinglu building at will. Is that so? Hearing this, Shirlan did not doubt him. She just nodded in confusion and believed his words. It was a fact that a large number of medicinal herbs were often sent to the mirage. The fish has taken the bait. Looking at Shirlan, who was deep in thought, Dustless laughed secretly. Of course, he had made up this nonsense. Where did this invitation card come from? As the saying went, it was easier to become an official if one had connections in the court. With Yueshan, an invisible subordinate, it was easy for Dustless to get this kind of invitation card. Can you really enter the mirage? Shirlan looked at Dustless with a longing look. Although she concealed the longing in her words cleverly, Dustless heard it clearly. This was normal. Shirlan's brother was caught in the mirage. She had always wanted to sneak into the coffin in the sea, but there was no suitable opportunity. Moreover, there were many experts in the mirage. If she sneaked in rashly, she would definitely get burned. Yes, I can, but, after glancing at Shirlan, Dustless lowered his voice and said, but why should I take you in? What if you have evil intentions and do something terrible? Won't I be implicated? I promise to be obedient. Hearing this, Shirlan hurriedly put on the look of an obedient child, afraid that Dustless would refuse. She raised her arms high and was about to make a vow to impress Dustless. I have no proof. How am I supposed to determine if you're telling the truth? Furthermore, your attitude toward me earlier was simply too vile. It's better that I find someone else to go to the mirage with me. Dustless purposely turned around and left. Wait. Seeing Dustless leave, Shirlan hesitated for a moment before she hurriedly chased after him and asked, what conditions do you have? As long as I can fulfill them, I will definitely not refuse. This guy. Why does he have to jump into the fire pit himself? Hearing this, Dustless's mind was moved. The corner of his mouth raised slightly, and he couldn't help but laugh shamelessly. On the surface, he looked very wretched. Shirlan, if I'm not wrong, you should be a girl, right? Hee hee. Immediately after, there was another wave of strange laughter. Shirlan's face instantly turned extremely pale. She already vaguely understood the dirty conditions Dustless proposed. This guy is really shameless. Shirlan's pretty face flashed with anger. Since Dustless knew that she was a girl, he still proposed conditions and even shamelessly threatened her. In particular, his wretched laughter made Shirlan feel even more uncomfortable. Shirlan's calm eyes gradually became colder. Your invitation letter. I will accept it. It would be impolite for me to decline. Shirlan, who originally looked weak, suddenly became extremely vigorous. Her toes lightly touched the ground, and her body rapidly flew over like a migrating bird. Her soft jade-like hand had already grabbed Dustless's invitation letter. You want to use force? Dustless narrowed his eyes, and a dangerous light shot out from the slits of his eyes. Too slow. A strange light swept across his body, and Dustless instantly retreated dozens of meters away, as if he had teleported. How did you do that? Realizing that she had grabbed nothing, Shirlan's beautiful eyes widened several times. She didn't even notice Dustless retreating, and she didn't even see how he moved. Ever since Mo family's mechanical city, my bounty has been increased to 1 million gold by that guy Ingzheng. If I was casually caught by a little girl like you, I would have died a long time ago. Dustless mercilessly attacked Shirlan, and said indifferently, with your strength, you still need to cultivate for thousands of years to catch up with my shadow. Arrogant. Shirlan didn't appreciate his words, and once again rushed towards Dustless. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. However, the scene was the same as before. After the sharp sound of breaking through the air, Dustless evaporated on the spot again. Shirlan helplessly realized that she couldn't catch up with Dustless's speed. She couldn't even see the speed of others, let alone catch up with Dustless. Do I have to agree to this guy's shameless condition? Shirlan thought indignantly. When she thought of Dustless's disgusting condition, her eyes turned red, and she looked quite aggrieved. Her brother was caught by Yun Zhongjuan, and now she encountered a shameless person. Shirlan's heart was about to collapse. Ahem, Miss Shirlan, I haven't said my condition yet, right? Please don't act like you are about to be violated. I feel very wronged. Dustless was depressed when he saw this. It seemed that he hadn't said his condition yet. It seemed that Sherlan had misunderstood. Chapter 1827. Cough, cough, cough. Seeing Sherlan's aggrieved and sad look, Dustless suddenly felt a little apologetic. Her brother had been captured by Yun Zhongjuan, and she had come to the unfamiliar Shanghai alone. He felt somewhat embarrassed if he continued to tease her. That old fellow Fu Nian spoke a lot of nonsense just now, and I was scolded by him for an entire class. Dustless casually found a place to lean on, exposing his back to Sherlan. He hummed and said, "Help me massage my back. You have to be good at it. Otherwise, I will refuse to take you to the Mirage. Your condition is that simple?" Sherlan's eyes were more or less filled with astonishment as she stared at Wu Qin. In her opinion, Wu Qin should be the one to raise the price and take advantage of the situation. "What do you think?" Wu Qin asked rhetorically. He stared at her graceful body and sized it up. Suddenly, he smiled ambiguously and said, "Do you want us to do something more fun than back massaging?" When he mentioned fun, Dustless deliberately emphasized the word fun. "No, I'll help you massage your back." Hearing this, Sherlan shook her head like a rattledrum. She took the initiative to approach Dustless, raised her fist, and gently knocked on his back. Faint ripples spread out in her calm eyes. This guy is so strange. Sherlan stared at Dustless's side profile. She felt that it was somewhat familiar, but she couldn't remember it. "Have we met somewhere before? I feel that you seem somewhat familiar." After a while, Sherlan couldn't help but ask curiously. "Of course we have met before," Dustless said in an extremely certain tone. "Have you really seen him before?" Sherlan was at a loss. She went through all the dusty memories in her mind, but she didn't have any impression of Dustless. "Smart all your life, but stupid this time." This sentence is not false at all. Dustless remained silent. Sherlan went to the wanted poster every day to look at the name list. She must have felt that Dustless was familiar. After all, he had a bounty of 1,000,000 gold taels. It was normal for Sherlan to have an impression of him. "Speaking of which, you look a little similar to that Dustless on the wanted poster." Sherlan's eyes suddenly changed. She looked at Dustless with suspicion. Dustless's mouth twitched a few times as he asked in a low voice, "Are you sure it's just a likeness?" "That's obviously me, okay." Dustless felt like he was going crazy. He had changed his appearance and become a scholarly disciple, and his name had also changed to Zichin. But Sherlan had said that he only looked like one. In short, Dustless had been dealt a heavy blow. "You're definitely not him." Shaking her head, Sherlan carefully shook her head again. "The contrast is too great." "The contrast is too great?" Dustless put on a fake smile as he touched his nose and asked, "What do you think is too great?" "In fact, I feel that I'm too similar to the Dustless on the wanted poster. We're practically the same." "It's not the same. Please don't insult the person I respect the most. If you don't, even if I'm not your match, I'll take you down with me." Sherlan shook her head stubbornly and said in admiration, "He single-handedly dealt a heavy blow to the Qin army that besieged the house of Mo, and even single-handedly dealt a heavy blow to Wei Zhuang's Lu Sha. He's the talk of the world. How can he be as sloppy as you?" Dustless was speechless. He could only stare and then sigh. Everyone has a different side. You don't know who that Dustless is. Perhaps even if that Dustless is right in front of you, you'll still treat him like a stranger and even look down on him. At least he's stronger than you." Sherlan snorted softly and said with certainty. In her opinion, this Zichin in front of her belonged to the frivolous type. To put it bluntly, he was just like a playboy. Dustless on the wanted poster, on the other hand, had single-handedly repelled the Qin army and Wei Zhuang's Lu Sha. How could such an unparalleled expert be a sloppy person like this Zichin? "This guy actually admires me so much." Looking at Sherlan's fascinated eyes, Dustless more or less felt that the affairs of the world were unpredictable. Unknowingly, he had gained a heavenly beauty as a fan. Speaking of which, when will you bring me into the mirage? Thinking of her brother who was still in the mirage, Shirlan asked expectantly and anxiously. Let's wait for a few months. After thinking for a while, Dustless gave an answer that made Shirlan want to vomit blood. A few months? Are you trying to act shamelessly? Shirlan's eyes widened slightly. She gave Dustless a punch in annoyance and asked angrily, are the disciples of the Confucian school so untrustworthy? Although I promised to bring you into the mirage, but I didn't specify the exact time. Dustless shrugged as if it had nothing to do with him. Hearing this, Shirlan's pretty face was covered with frost. She did not expect Dustless to play word games. Now, everything upstairs is still being prepared, and you might not achieve your goal. Dustless explained calmly, I just don't want to waste my effort. You saw what happened a few days ago, right? The Enyang school has just arrived in Shanghai, and all the preparations have not been completed. This seems to be true. Shirlan nodded noncommittally. Yun Zhongjuan and the others had just arrived in Shanghai, and the follow-up preparations had not been completed. If they sneaked in rashly now, they would only end up empty-handed. Her brother might not be on the mirage yet, so there was no harm in waiting for the time being. All right, you can go and deliver the food to them. Dustless waved his hand, indicating that Shirlan could leave. Before she left, he said something that confused Shirlan. She did not understand what Dustless was saying and what he was trying to express. Such a lousy fan is too unprofessional. How dare she say that the original is a fake? She will definitely not be able to get an autograph in the future. Chapter 1828. Dustless complained as he walked, expressing his dissatisfaction with Shirlan's lousy fan. He felt extremely unlucky to be mistaken as the real deal. Of course, this couldn't be blamed on Shirlan. When he entered the Mo clan, for the sake of some unnecessary trouble, Zhang Liang specially helped Wu Chen to use a disguise technique to change some features of his appearance. It was normal that Shirlan couldn't recognize Dustless. Forget it. True gold fears no fire. You'll know who the real deal is in the future. Dustless walked out of the back door of the Confucian school and glanced at Shirlan before walking away. As for today's lesson, he left it to his clone. Dustless was bored by the Confucian school's gentleman's path. He was used to being a villain, and the noble script of a gentleman didn't suit him. Let's go to the Mo family's new base for now. Dustless strolled aimlessly on the streets. He wanted to go to Pao Ding Inn, but he suddenly remembered that the Mo family had retreated to the wilderness. Dustless changed his direction and walked towards the deep mountains and forests outside the city. This is the person who made Wei Zhuang fail? In a mansion, a pale-faced child looked at the wanted poster on the table. He frowned when he saw the unprecedented bounty on it. He was surprised that this person could make Wei Zhuang retreat. Yes, Master Xing Hun. The beautiful woman beside the young man nodded. She was emitting a murderous aura and a bone-piercing chill. The person on the wanted poster was Dustless. These two people were Great Si Ming and Xing Hun from the Enyang school. You hate him a lot. Xing Hun turned his head and looked at Great Si Ming in surprise. He could feel the cold murderous aura very clearly. I have some grudges against him. Great Si Ming nodded with a bitter expression, but he didn't mention the reason. Damn you, you better not let me catch you. Otherwise, I will make you regret being alive. Great Si Ming did not show any emotions on his face, but his heart was burning with rage. Great Si Ming had her reasons for not mentioning the grudge between her and Dustless. She couldn't possibly tell Xing Hun that damned Dustless had peed in front of her, young Si Ming, and the moon goddess. How could Great Si Ming say such words that could kill? His Excellency Dong Huang said that the traitors of the Mo family have all come to Shanghai. Xing Hun did not probe further. He stood with his hands behind his back and looked into the distant void. He said with certainty, His Excellency Dong Huang is unfathomable. His astrology has never been wrong. I have a feeling that we will meet that fellow sooner or later. This is inevitable. As long as Dustless is in Shanghai, meeting him is only a matter of time. Great Si Ming agreed wholeheartedly. She had been patrolling every night to look for Dustless. She hoped that the heavens would give her face and kill Dustless if she met him. Ever since the previous incident, Great Si Ming had a shadow in her sleep. Sometimes, she would dream of this enemy of hers peeing in front of the moon goddess, young Si Ming, and herself. At night, the dark sky was filled with bright stars. The night breeze was nice. On the deserted street, only a thin figure was walking leisurely. This outfit is still the most comfortable. When he returned from the Mo family's stronghold, it was already midnight. Dustless stretched his body and felt that the outfit given to him by Duanmu Rong was much more comfortable. The Confucians paid attention to the rules of their sect and their attire was more formal. It was not suitable for a lazy person like Dustless. It's already so late. You're still out? Aren't you afraid of danger? A malicious voice was heard. Dustless was slightly stunned. He looked over and saw a burly man walking out of the alley. So it's you, Dustless was slightly stunned. When he saw the burly man, a look of surprise flashed across his face. This man was carrying a huge sword on his back. The body of the sword was very rough and did not have a sharp edge. However, it was shockingly heavy. This burly man looked ferocious. The left side of his chest was half naked and his cheeks were covered in tattoos. His appearance was also very scary. You are Shang-Chi of the farmer's sect? When he saw this man, Dustless was puzzled and asked, I don't think I have any grudges with you. Are you here to take revenge on me? I'm here to look for Gunya. Shang-Chi did not hide his intentions and said in a low voice, I heard from Luo Jia that you seem to have an inexplicable relationship with Gunya. When you were at the Mo family, you were even allies in the trenches, I see. I understand why you're here. Dustless smiled at Shang-Chi and said, you want to ask me where Gunya is hiding, right? I do know where he is, but the price is a little high. No matter how I look at it, you look like a pauper. You can't afford this price. This guy is really good at insulting people, Shang-Chi thought to himself. After thinking about it for a long time, he finally understood what Dustless meant. He was actually mocking him for being weak. I can't deny that I'm no match for you. Shang-Chi did not waste his breath. He had heard of Dustless's achievements. He had single-handedly defeated all the members of Quicksand, including Wei Zhuang. He knew that he could not do that. So, you can state a condition. After I help you, in exchange, you have to tell me where Gunya is hiding. Shang-Chi stated his condition. Shang-Chi had been imprisoned because of Gunya. Hence, they were like fire and water. When enemies met, they would be filled with hatred. An exchange? Dustless frowned slightly. He did not expect Shang-Chi, who was as stubborn as steel, to be so cowardly. Moreover, this condition seemed to be quite good. He really did have something that he needed help with. After you help me kill someone, I'll tell you where Gunya is. Chapter 1829. You're willing to accept my conditions? That's great. Shang-Chi revealed a rare smile. If Wu Chen did not agree to his request, Shang-Chi would also be helpless. If they met in battle, he would definitely lose. Since he could not defeat Wu Chen in a fight, if he rashly challenged Wu Chen, the result would be no different from setting himself on fire. After all, Wei Zhuang's Quicksand and a large number of Qin troops, in addition to Gongshu Chou family's mechanical beasts, were all crushed by Wu Chen. With such a shocking strength, if one claimed to be the second in the world, absolutely no one would dare to claim to be the first in the world. My conditions are very simple. Help me kill Chu Nangong and take the Yellowstone Heavenly Book from him. Dustless pondered for a while and gave his answer. I can't do that. Dustless thought that Shang-Chi would agree on the spot. Who knew that this guy would stare at him with a fiery face? Sir, are you joking? Shang-Chi clenched his fists tightly, making cracking sounds. He said angrily, don't you know that Chu Nangong and I? No, you don't know the relationship between Luo Shu and me? Of course I know. You are just Zhao Gao's dog. Dustless replied calmly, but, so what? If you can't complete my mission, don't even think about knowing Gunye's location. You are purposely making things difficult for me. Shang-Chi snorted unhappily and said angrily, Luo Shu's 6 sword slaves listen to Zhao Gao, but don't forget that Li Si is Zhao Gao's boss. So what? Dustless was still unmoved. It wasn't hard to tell that Li Si's status was higher than Zhao Gao's. In other words, the entire Luo Shu listens to Li Si. I am also one of them and am under their control. That Chu Nangong is Li Si's follower. How do you want me to kill him? Shang-Chi asked gloomily. He was getting angrier. So there is such a relationship. That means that Chu Nangong is on your side? But... Dustless said coldly, what does this have to do with me? You useless trash. You don't even dare to kill an old man. What's the use of keeping you? Swish. Swish. As soon as he finished speaking, Dustless instantly transformed into a stream of light and flew straight towards Shang-Chi. No wonder Dustless is rumored to be a godly expert. This speed is so fast. Seeing this, Shang-Chi's pupils suddenly shrank. His tiger body shook. When he was about to pull out Zhu Ke, it was already too late. You're too slow. Just the moment you draw your sword is enough for me to kill you dozens of times. Dustless stood with his hands behind his back. His eyes were as calm as water. When he appeared again, he was already in front of Shang-Chi. However, Shang-Chi had not even drawn his sword yet. Die. Hearing Dustless's disdainful tone, Shang-Chi's killing intent erupted like a flood. The power in his right arm was unleashed to the maximum, and his great ravager swept out with the force of 1,000 caddies. Buzz buzz buzz. Not only that, but Great Ravager's broad blade was also emitting a transparent white light as it emitted a clear cry. You're too weak. Facing the incoming radiance, Dustless did not dodge. The white light that covered the blade was filled with boundless destructive power. Having been in this world for some time, Dustless knew that it was the so-called true Qi. Ha! Shang-Chi shouted loudly. He used all his strength and true Qi to bet on this move. Swish. 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 The huge blade was about to reach Dustless's head and split it into two. However, Dustless's sudden move made Shang-Chi stunned. Even the sword that he had thrown out almost fell to the ground. After coming back to his senses, Shang-Chi was even more furious. Under the influence of anger, the power in his hand increased a little. You want to catch my attack with your bare hands? Do you think Zhu Ke is a fire stick? The anger in Shang-Chi's heart surged. Dustless's actions were simple and casual. Facing Shang-Chi's incoming blade, he only calmly raised his right arm that was even more delicate than a girl's hand. It was no wonder that Shang-Chi was so angry. Taking a step back, even if Zhu Ke was a fire stick, it was not something that could be caught with one hand. Dustless's disdain for him had hurt Shang-Chi's self-esteem. Boom boom boom. The thick and broad sword slammed into Wu Chen's body, and the genuine energy that covered the great sword scattered in all directions. The wooden houses on both sides of the street instantly suffered a fatal blow, and were instantly flattened by the absolute power. Humph, this is the price for looking down on me. Looking at the miserable situation around him, Shang-Chi's lips curled up slightly, revealing a proud smile. However, he looked at Dustless again. He thought that this guy would be turned into minced meat, but this is the power of Zhu Ke? It's really not worth complimenting. The mocking tone fell into Shang-Chi's ears. His rough old face twitched a few times as he stared at the smiling Dustless. Shang-Chi's eyes widened a few times, almost popping out as he tried to find some wounds on Dustless's body. However, the sad thing was, after looking at him for a long time, Shang-Chi still found that Dustless was still alive and kicking. This, Shang-Chi showed a rare look of panic and shouted in disbelief, impossible, he was attacked by Zhu Ke with full power. Not only did he not die, but he is also perfectly fine, you are too weak. Dustless grabbed Shang-Chi's Zhu Ke with his right hand and then raised his left fist. Seeing this, Shang-Chi's face changed slightly. He said in a low voice, we don't have any conflicts of interest, so there is no need for an unnecessary battle. We can cooperate and take our own benefits. You have no reason to fight with me. Huh? Dustless looked at Shang-Chi with disdain and sneered, the reason why I beat you up is not because of any benefits, but because you wasted my time for half a day and even dared to reject my conditions. If I don't teach you a lesson, where will I put my face? Boom boom. As soon as his voice fell, Dustless's fist flew towards Shang-Chi. Chapter 1830. Looking at the incoming fist, Shang-Chi's expression changed drastically. Ah! Shang-Chi roared loudly and used all his strength to pull out the Great Ravager. However, Wu Chen's seemingly weak right hand was surprisingly strong. Shang-Chi couldn't resist at all. He was so tired that he gasped for breath, but he still couldn't pull out the Great Ravager. At the same time, Dustless's left fist was about to hit him. Shoo shoo shoo. At the critical moment, Shang-Chi decisively threw away the Great Ravager and dodged the fatal fist. Humph, as a swordsman, you threw away your sword. You want to kill Chu Nangong with your level? Seeing Shang-Chi retreat, Dustless sneered and pulled the Great Ravager's body. Damn it. Shang-Chi's body was pulled back again. There was a metal chain at the hilt of the Great Ravager. It was 3 to 4 meters long. On the other end, there was a metal collar around Shang-Chi's neck. As long as the Great Ravager was held by Dustless, he couldn't escape. Get out of my way. After pulling Shang-Chi back with brute force, Dustless punched out with his left fist. Ka ka ka. Shang-Chi's sturdy chest was hit by a strong force. Ka 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 sounds could be heard. It sounded like his sternum was broken. However, this wasn't the most horrifying thing. Shang-Chi's chest caved in and a fist mark could be seen. Pfft. Shang-Chi immediately spurted out a mouthful of blood. Wu Chen loosened his grip on the Great Ravager. Shang-Chi's huge body was sent flying several feet away by the punch. He lay on the ground half dead and only had a weak breath left. Weak. Seeing this, Dustless curled his lips. Just as he was about to go back, he suddenly squinted his eyes. You too, after peeping for so long, it's time to show yourself. On the left side, in a dark alley, 2 faint shadows appeared from time to time. Although he couldn't see their specific appearance, it was obvious that one of them was tall and the other was short. Moreover, their strength was not bad, and their ability to hide their aura was quite good. What caught Dustless's attention the most was the familiar scent he sensed from the short man. Both of them are from the school of Yin Yang. That brat should have formed his star soul, right? The two of them gradually walked out of the darkness. With the help of the hazy moonlight, they saw Great Si Ming and Xing Han, one of the 2 guardians of the Yin Yang school. Your Excellency has good skills. Shang-Chi is Zhao Gao's subordinate. To be valued by him, your strength is self-evident. However, he was defeated so easily by you. The title of number 1 in the world is indeed well-deserved. An immature yet mature voice came from the astral soul. He glanced at the half-dead Shang-Chi, and there was an unconcealable shock on his face. Number 1 in the world? Since when did I have such a nickname? Dustless wasn't interested in this title at all. A tall tree attracts the wind. In order to become famous, some people would definitely think of ways to challenge Dustless and replace him. It doesn't matter when it started. The point is that this title didn't bury its brilliance when it landed on you. You deserve it, Xing Han said calmly. Is that so? Then I'm really shocked. Dustless pretended to be flustered. Then, he looked at Great Sea Ming and Xing Hun in fear and said, "Both of you came with ill intentions. Are you trying to snatch away my title of number one in the world? That's not it." Seeing Dustless's fearful look, Xing Hun's calm heart rippled. He looked unhappy. He felt that Dustless made such an exaggerated expression on purpose to mock him and Great Sea Ming. "To be honest, I'm here to invite you to join the school of Yin Yang," Xing Hun said shockingly, "and the treatment will not be lower than Yueshan and I join the school of Yin Yang?" Dustless frowned slightly and said bluntly, "Although you are one of the two great imperial masters of the Qin kingdom and the left guardian of the school of Yin Yang, you shouldn't have such authority." His status was not lower than Yueshan and Xing Hun, which meant that he was also a guardian. Dustless didn't think that Xing Hun and Great Sea Ming could casually appoint someone as a guardian of the school of Yin Yang. "That's right. This is beyond my authority." Xing Hun didn't deny it. No one had the authority to do this. Of course, there was one exception. To be honest, this was promised by His Excellency Dong Huang. "You don't have to worry about being deceived." Xing Hun finally mentioned an important person. "Dong Huang Tai?" Upon hearing this, Dustless murmured subconsciously. He looked shocked. After all, he had never met Dong Huang Tai before. However, Dong Huang Tai had promised him the position of guardian. This showed how much Dong Huang Tai valued Dustless. "It's His Excellency Dong Huang." Upon hearing Dustless call out Dong Huang Tai's name, Xing Hun reminded him unhappily. "The position of guardian is indeed tempting." Dustless smiled and nodded. Then, he changed the topic and asked, "What if I refuse?" "Refuse?" Upon hearing this, Xing Hun laughed sinisterly. "Of course you can refuse. However, I'm afraid you won't be able to see the sun rise again." "Just the two of you?" Wu Chen snorted in disdain and mocked, "In my life, what I hate the most is the kind of idiot who doesn't have any strength but likes to be arrogant. Not to mention a mere star soul like you, even if Dong Huang Tai were to carry my palanquin, he wouldn't be worthy. You are courting death." Xing Hun was stunned for a moment. Then, a cold murderous intent shot out from his eyes. He gathered a large amount of vital energy in his hands and quickly gathered it. A huge blue invisible blade appeared in the blink of an eye. Great Sea Ming, who couldn't wait to take revenge, attacked immediately. He formed a few unfamiliar warlocks with his hands and a blood-red skeleton appeared. Chapter 1831. Looks like you guys are well prepared. Dustless glanced at the blood-red skull and gave Great Sea Ming a look of admiration before ignoring him. His main opponent this time was Xing Hun and not Great Sea Ming. Xing Hun's strength was above Great Sea Ming. "Of course we are prepared. You and Xing Qi are fighting so fiercely that it's hard for others not to notice." Xing Hun stared at Dustless with his eyes burning like torches. His evil face was overflowing with demonic aura. "Moreover, I would like to see how powerful you are." Having said that, Xing Hun glanced at Great Sea Ming. "Go to hell." Great Sea Ming nodded and condensed a blood-red skull hand on his forehead. A strange cry came from it. Then, it pounced on Wu Chen at an extremely fast speed. It was so fast that the naked eye could not even see it moving. Bloody skull handprint. As soon as he finished his sentence, the blood-red skull surrounded Dustless and trapped him in the skull. Bloody skull handprint? It sounds scary, but I just want to tell you that even the golden handprint is useless against me, let alone the bloody handprint. Wu Chen, who was in the depths of the blood-red skull, had a calm expression. He looked as if nothing had happened to him. This guy isn't affected? Seeing this, Great Sea Ming opened his cherry lips instinctively as shock filled his face. He is indeed as mysterious and unfathomable as the rumors say. Xing Hun frowned. Dustless was the first person who was able to talk to them unscathed after being hit by the bloody skull handprint. Xing Hun naturally did not suspect that Great Sea Ming had gone easy on him. The bloody skull handprint was dark red and its genuine energy was thick. The color was almost the same as real blood. Not only did Great Sea Ming not reduce his strength, he even used his full strength. On the other hand, Dustless was not only unscathed, he was even humming a tune. How infuriating. You'd better restrain yourself a little. The consequences of my anger are very serious. Great Sea Ming was struck hard by Wu Chen. His delicate face was now filled with killing intent, and his delicate face was now covered in a layer of cold frost. The skeleton blood handprint was Great Sea Ming's proudest move, but it did not work on Dustless. Great Sea Ming was really annoyed, especially when he saw Dustless's calm face. The calmer Dustless looked, the more annoyed Great Sea Ming was. You bastard, give me. The night is long. Don't worry. Xing Han waved his hand and stopped Great Sea Ming, who was about to continue attacking. He looked at the crack on the ground under Dustless's feet and said, Your bloody skull handprint has indeed become more powerful. Look at the ground under Dustless's feet. Caw caw caw. Cracks visible to the naked eye appeared on the thick bluestone slabs. As time passed, the cracks grew larger and larger, gradually becoming a ghastly sight. But it's a fact that Dustless isn't affected. Great Sea Ming said in a defeated tone. His best move couldn't affect Wu Chen at all, not even the most basic of effects. Look carefully. I finally understand why Wei Zhuang lost to this guy. Xing Han took a deep breath. Upon closer inspection, he was shocked to discover that Wu Chen, who was shrouded in the blood-red skull, was surrounded by energy ripples that could be seen with the naked eye. Wave after wave, the blood-red vital energy in the skull kept attacking him. But what was unbelievable was that Wu Chen was not affected at all. The collapse of the bluestone slabs on the ground was the best example. It was enough to show the power of the bloody skull handprint. It's not that you're useless. It's just that this guy's body is ridiculously tough. With your current strength, you won't be able to move him for the time being. After a while, Xing Han gave an answer that made Great Sea Ming even more speechless. You're not trying to hurt me on purpose, are you? Great Sea Ming glanced at Xing Han with dissatisfaction. It was rare for him to grumble. Hey, the two of you have been talking nonsense for so long. Don't you dare to attack me? Dustless grumbled. Feeling bored, he glanced at the blood-red skull and an even stronger wave of energy burst out from his body. Bang bang bang. Wu Chen's body erupted with even more majestic power in an instant. The blood-red skulls that were wandering around his body were violently impacted. They did not even have room to resist and instantly disappeared without a trace. Boom boom boom. The houses on both sides of the street that were dozens of feet away were severely damaged and turned into ruins. Is this something a human can do? Great Sea Ming looked at Dustless in horror. A distance of 10 feet was equivalent to 3 meters. A distance of 10 feet was naturally 33 meters. In other words, Dustless didn't even lift a finger. He just used his aura to destroy the surrounding buildings that were dozens of meters away. This is impossible. Xing Han was also shocked. Whether Dong Wang Tai was able to do such a thing was still a question. However, and nobody like Wu Chen was able to do it. This made the two of them feel that it was a fantasy story. Before rising up, Dustless was just a nameless minor character. I finally understand why His Excellency Dong Wang thinks so highly of this guy. Such strength, a strange look flashed across Great Sea Ming's eyes. She was one of Xing Han's subordinates and had a certain understanding of this guardian's strength. Although he was unreasonably strong and was the rarest super genius in the Yinyang sect for hundreds of years, compared to Dustless, Xing Han, who was a dazzling light, suddenly became insignificant. After all, his opponent was the inextinguishable bright moon. What are you looking at? When Xing Han noticed the strange look in Great Sea Ming's eyes, he was extremely displeased and warned loudly, "Stabilize your mind. Be careful and focus on dealing with your enemy." "Yes, Sir Xing Han." Great Sea Ming quickly turned his head around. Damn it. Xing Han's face darkened. Even if Great Sea Ming didn't say it, Xing Hun knew what Great Si Ming was thinking. Xing Hun, who had always been the main character, had become a foil to Dustless. This grievance made him extremely hostile towards Dustless. Chapter 1832. As a genius, it was inevitable that he would be arrogant. Even though Xing Hun did not show it, it was normal for geniuses to be arrogant. But now, he was being looked down upon by his own subordinate. Anyone would find it hard to accept such a thing, much less someone as young as Xing Hun. As one of the two great guardians of the Enyang school and the state guardian of the Qin Empire, Xing Hun's abilities were undeniable. His position was also unprecedented and was not any weaker than Yueshan. Dong Huang Tai also thought highly of him. I want to see where your limit is. Xing Hun's eyes turned cold and dark as he shot out air blades from his hands. Ha! With a low shout, Xing Hun's cold and desolate eyes were as swift as thunder and as swift as the wind, with a ruthless look in them. Swish swish swish. His two hands suddenly crossed, and the chi blades gathered between his left and right hands extended for several meters without limit. It seemed that the two huge chi blades were about to crush Wu Chen. Condensing air blades? Looks good on the surface. Dustless also made a counterattack as he glanced at the cold light coming from his left and right. Boom! The corner of Wu Chen's clothes suddenly swelled up, and an extraordinary power swept out. A perfect circle of protection appeared around him in an instant. Shinra Tensei. Boom! At the same time, the sharp cold light also all blasted over. Immediately, a muffled explosion was heard. What is that? Sensing that his chi blade had struck an unknown hard object, Xing Hun's hands, which were connected to the chi blade, trembled violently. Both his arms were numb from the impact. He turned his gaze towards Wu Chen and his pupils suddenly froze. He saw a circle of protection around Dustless. The air blades were unable to break through this layer of protection. It was even more impossible to cut it apart. They could not even leave a mark. You actually want to use such a vulgar move to defeat me? You are too childish. Dustless looked at the air blades on both sides of his body and commented disdainfully, Xing Hun, right? A rare genius from the Enyang school, right? I can't even muster up the desire to kill someone of your standard. You are too weak. Why couldn't he raise his killing intent? The reason was simple. Xing Hun was simply too weak. Dustless didn't even have the slightest bit of interest. In the past, his opponents were all far stronger than Xing Hun. You bastard! Xing Hun's face darkened as he finally understood what Great Si Ming was thinking. What are you staring at? Come at me together. Seeing the shock on Great Si Ming's face, the admiration for Dustless's strength, and the fear on his face, Xing Hun was filled with anger, and all of it was directed at Great Si Ming. I understand. Hearing that, Great Si Ming quickly nodded his head, but he was displeased with Xing Hun. You were slapped in the face, but you blame me. This is ridiculous. You deserve to be mocked and slandered. Buzz buzz buzz. Great Si Ming then made a few mysterious hand seals, which were similar to Dustless's hand seals. Soon after, Great Si Ming's blood-red hands released waves of blood-red mist that could be seen with the naked eye. Then, an inexplicably strong smell of blood suddenly descended. Her hands, Dustless squinted his eyes. Great Si Ming's blood-red hands looked extraordinary. They were even harder than swords. In the original book, Great Si Ming also used this pair of hands to fight against Tianming's non-offensive technique. The school of Enyang was indeed unique. If it wasn't for silver, the school of Enyang would definitely be the #1 sect in the world. It was a pity that they were unlucky this time. They chose Dustless as their opponent and blocked his path. Since both parties were pursuing the 7 constellations of the Blue Dragon, someone was destined to be eliminated. Enyang Palm Seal. In an instant, a Enyang Tai Chi 8 trigrams diagram appeared, all of which were condensed from extremely dense steam. Boom boom boom. It was just a simple Tai Chi diagram, but who would have expected it to evolve into hundreds and thousands of concentrated attacks? Countless genuine chi ripples came from the void. The school of yin-yang strength is average, but you have many dazzling techniques. Looking at the concentrated attacks, Dustless's eyes spun rapidly as he muttered, "Heavenly reflection." Boom, boom, boom. In the void, the flame of nirvana was ignited. The evil black flame appeared out of nowhere and devoured everything. Great Si Ming's technique could not escape this fate. In just a few breaths' time, it disappeared without a trace. Black flames. Great Si Ming's pupils constricted as he saw his painstakingly planned attack being dispelled in one go. It was as if he was pushed back by a wave of overwhelming power. He felt even more frustrated and depressed. "Are you paying attention to your back?" A sinister voice suddenly sounded. Wu Chen turned his head slightly and saw that it was Xing Han, who had a stern face. Pfft! The sharp air blade pierced through Dustless's body, leaving a ghastly wound. "You're done for this time." Seeing Dustless's pierced heart, Xing Han smiled proudly. He stood with his hands behind his back and said calmly, "It's not wrong for someone like you to die in my hands." However, Xing Han was instantly dumbfounded. Bam! Wu Chen's corpse suddenly exploded. Right under Xing Han's nose, a dramatic scene of a living person disappearing and turning into a piece of wood. "Brat, that was just my doppelganger technique. Also, I would like to ask, are you paying attention to your back?" The cold figure gave Xing Han goosebumps. He turned his head and saw the expressionless Dustless. Chapter 1833. Xing Han was not the only one who was at a loss. Even Great Si Ming was in the same state. That strange moment just now was like a magic trick. The dead Dustless had turned into a block of wood. What made everyone speechless was that Dustless had not only turned into a block of wood, but he had also slashed Xing Han. Pfft! The sharp blade radiance pierced through Xing Han's body from the back, causing him to bleed profusely. "You! Where did you come from?" Xing Han stared at Dustless in disbelief. His face turned even paler. "That slash just now definitely killed you. Idiot, didn't I tell you that it was just a doppelganger technique?" Dustless shook his head and glanced at Xing Han. He mocked loudly, "You are the guardian of the school of yin-yang. You are just a so-so." Dustless looked at the ferocious Xing Han and shook his head disappointedly. "To think that I was looking forward to it. Looks like Dong Huang Tai is just a so-so. How dare you insult His Excellency Dong Huang?" Hearing that Dustless was looking down on his idol, Xing Han's cold face turned even colder. Even flames could be frozen. Ha! He mustered the last of his strength and a dangerous radiance shot out from his hands. He swept it towards Dustless without hesitation. His method was extremely cruel and bloody as he charged towards Dustless's head. Xing Han had thought that his abdomen had been pierced and that he was at the end of his tether. However, this rare genius of the school of yin-yang was indeed extraordinary. He still had the strength to struggle and used a fatal air blade at the critical moment. "You have won. You are indeed Lord Xing Han." Seeing this, Great Si Ming clenched his fists excitedly. His face was filled with joy. He saw that the air blade was about to hit Dustless again. However, Dustless still looked lazy and did not seem to notice it. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. He had thought that Dustless's head would be chopped off on the spot. Who knew? Clang. 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 The toughness of Dustless's head was too high, and indeed, something had been sliced off. However, the thing that had been sliced off was the chi blade condensed from his astral souls. As for Dustless's head, it was completely fine. What kind of monster is this? How could he be fine after being hit by a chi blade that was twice as powerful? What's more, it's in a situation where you're defenseless. Xing Han's conviction had completely collapsed and his voice was trembling. "Brat, you really know how to play tricks." Suddenly, he felt an itch on his scalp. Turning his head to take a look, Dustless discovered that the broken chi blade had yet to disappear. Of course, there was also his numb astral soul. Looks like the knife wound wasn't fatal, otherwise you wouldn't have this kind of skill. With a cold laugh, Dustless suddenly grabbed Xing Hun and threw him into the air. Just as he was about to hit the ground, Dustless kicked Xing Hun away like a football. Bang! The heavy kick landed on Xing Hun's abdomen. Xing Hun immediately rolled and crawled, flying tens of meters away. He laid on the ground miserably and had suffered an unprecedented injury. He spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Sir Xing Hun, are you all right? Great Si Ming hurried over and looked at the dying Xing Hun. He was disgusted by Dustless's strength. He shifted his gaze and saw Xing Hun's lazy look. When Xing Hun launched a sneak attack on Dustless, he didn't even notice it. Clearly, he was distracted. It wasn't hard to see that Dustless didn't care about this battle at all. Both of them weren't on the same level. Great Si Ming, are you prepared to sacrifice yourself for the Yin-Yang sect? After glaring at Dustless viciously, Xing Hun's cold gaze landed on Great Si Ming. Hearing this, Great Si Ming was taken aback and hesitated. If he could continue living, no one would want to die. However, looking at Xing Hun's cold gaze, Great Si Ming was terrified. He knew that if he said what he was thinking, Xing Hun would be furious. He immediately changed his words. Of course, dying for the Yin-Yang sect is my life's wish. Well said, I admire you. Xing Hun nodded his head in satisfaction. If it weren't for his severe injuries, he would have applauded Great Si Ming. Move your ear closer. I have a perfect escape plan. Xing Hun hooked his finger and blew cold air. Combined with his blood-stained face, he looked extremely demonic. Sir Xing Hun, please tell me. I will do my best. Great Si Ming nodded, but immediately regretted it. Xing Hun grabbed Great Si Ming's arm at lightning speed. His lips curled into a cruel smile and his cold eyes were emotionless, causing Great Si Ming to tremble. Sir Xing Hun, why are you doing this? Looking at Xing Hun's cold face, Great Si Ming sensed that something was wrong and asked. Xing Hun's cunning smile made Great Si Ming feel uneasy. Didn't you say that you could sacrifice yourself for the Yin-Yang sect? I have a perfect escape plan now and I'm counting on you to realize it, Great Si Ming. At this moment, Xing Hun grabbed Great Si Ming's right hand. Without waiting for Great Si Ming's reply, he suddenly unleashed an unimaginable force and threw Great Si Ming in the direction of Dustless. Great Si Ming, I order you to cover my retreat. It's time for you to sacrifice yourself for the Yin-Yang sect. Remember, you have to hold back Dustless for me and buy time for me to retreat. Then, under Great Si Ming's shocked gaze, Xing Hun turned and ran the moment he threw Great Si Ming. His speed was comparable to Dustless's. That bastard Xing Hun. How dare he be the guardian of the Yin-Yang sect? He's a cowardly scum. Great Si Ming regained her senses and cursed. She did say that she would sacrifice herself for the Yin-Yang sect, but she didn't say that she would sacrifice herself for Xing Hun. Xing Hun couldn't represent the Yin-Yang sect. Chapter 1834. However, no matter how much Great Si Ming hated Xing Hun, it was useless. She was about to face the unpredictable and eccentric Dustless. If there were no accidents, she would definitely die. You should feel happy that you're dying for me. You're just one of the 5 elders, while I'm one of the 2 protectors. This is such a rare honor, you idiot. Xing Hun turned around and glanced at Great Si Ming. Seeing the hatred on her face, Xing Hun curled his lips disapprovingly. Great Si Ming was just one of the 5 great elders in the Yin-Yang sect. Great Si Ming was just one of them. Xing Hun did not feel that he was being too shameless. This was Great Si Ming's honor. Damn you, Xing Hun, you despicable person. Seeing Xing Hun's disappearing figure, Great Si Ming wanted to die. She cursed herself for being blind. At first, she even wanted to die together with Xing Hun. She was even prepared to perish together with Dustless. Who knew that Xing Hun would be so cunning as to use her as a shield against Dustless? TSK, how pitiful. Dustless stared at Great Sea Ming, who was full of hatred, with interest. She hated Xing Hun to death. If she could choose between the two, she would definitely choose to die with Xing Hun. In the original work, Great Sea Ming respected Xing Hun. After all, Xing Hun was his superior. However, she did not expect that the so-called strongest genius in the Yin-Yang sect would be so shameless. If I were you, I would go and kill that scumbag Xing Hun now. Seeing Dustless approaching, Great Sea Ming gave up resisting and seemed to have resigned herself to her fate. Kill him? I don't have the time to do that. Dustless shook his head and said, in fact, no matter where he escapes, his life is in my hands. It is up to me whether I kill him or not. You're talking nonsense. Great Sea Ming snorted coldly. Initially, he thought that Wu Chen was arrogant enough. However, he had underestimated him. This fellow was completely lawless, as though everything was under his control. It was as though he was implying that killing Xing Hun was just a thought. It's up to you to believe it or not. Dustless didn't want to waste any more time. Instead, he stared at young Master Ming and said straightforwardly, you don't want to die yet, do you? Especially now, he can't wait to tear Xing Hun into pieces. So what? Great Sea Ming shouted coldly. Dustless was right, she hated Xing Hun to the core. Making use of the enemy at the right time is often more effective than making use of allies. Dustless reached out and grabbed Great Sea Ming's chin. His eyes slowly turned red, and his 3-tomo Sharingan made people shudder. What do you want to do? Great Sea Ming choked and clenched her fists. Looking at Dustless's evil Sharingan, she couldn't help but twitch. I'm thinking, should I torture you to death or make you my lackey? Dustless blew a breath of cold air into Great Sea Ming's ear, then said blandly, of course, it all depends on your performance. Hearing this, Great Sea Ming stared at him angrily. Dustless's words had trampled on her pride, but she didn't dare to talk back. She felt that the evil eyes were more terrifying than the wild beasts and Xing Hun's cold eyes. Even her soul was trembling. Oh yes, before we meet again, I have something to ask you. Dustless suddenly thought of something and asked, did someone sneak an attack on Xing Hun a few days ago? Great Sea Ming was stunned. She looked at Dustless in surprise and said in a deep voice, how did you know about this? There are only a few people in the Yin-Yang school who know about this. The mysterious expert who sneaked an attack on Xing Hun even injured him. Moreover, the technique he used was extremely strange, similar to the Yin-Yang school. Many people thought that it was concubine Yen who did it. Idiot. Hearing this, Dustless smiled but didn't say anything. He thought to himself, concubine Yen didn't do it. She didn't have the time to do it. If I'm not wrong, the one who did it should be Yueshan. However, Yueshan is really smart. She actually framed concubine Yen. In this way, she can clear her name and not be suspected. When Wu Chen had captured Moon Goddess alive, he had threatened her to sneak an attack on Xing Hun so that he could trust Moon Goddess to be his subordinate. Now, it seemed that Moon Goddess had successfully fulfilled her part of the agreement and would be one of them in the future. The one who sneaked an attack on Xing Hun is Yueshan. Looking at Great Sea Ming, Dustless ignored her shock and continued, since the incident at the Mo family's mechanical city, Yueshan has been one of my people. Don't try to fool me. Great Sea Ming rejected him without hesitation. However, Dustless's Sharingan moved slightly and the scene of him having a private conversation with Yueshan that day entered Great Sea Ming's mind in the form of an illusion. After a few minutes, Great Sea Ming looked at Dustless in disbelief. You can even make someone like Yueshan betray you. Great Sea Ming gasped. She was afraid of Dustless but at the same time, she admired him. Regardless of what method he used to make Yueshan submit to him, Great Sea Ming found it unbelievable. So what's your choice? Do you want to stay on the same boat or report to hell? Looking at Great Sea Ming quietly, Dustless asked calmly. Great Sea Ming was in a dilemma. It would be great if she could live but to be Dustless's spy. She was in a dilemma and didn't know what to do. If you die, then Xing-hun, alright, I promise you. It would have been better if Great Si Ming didn't mention Xing-hun. The moment Xing-hun was mentioned, Great Si Ming was furious. She gritted her teeth and agreed to Dustless's request. Hee hee, at least you know what's good for you. Dustless laughed secretly. He then glanced at Great Si Ming and said, however, although you have agreed to my condition, I still can't trust you. You have to be like Yueshan and sneak an attack on Xing-hun and do something similar. Only then can I barely trust that you are sincere. Chapter 1835. Are you trying to make things difficult for me? Upon hearing this, Great Si Ming was not in a hurry to refute. Instead, she retorted angrily. She was not as powerful as the moon god and it would be difficult for her to attack Xing-hun to gain Dustless's trust. Hee hee, there are other ways but I'm afraid you won't agree to it. Staring at Great Si Ming's naked body, Dustless smiled maliciously. You, upon seeing this, Great Si Ming's body twitched and her face turned slightly red. She had already guessed Dustless's intention. This guy, Great Si Ming's face darkened. She did not expect Dustless to have such dirty thoughts. She felt that even breathing in the same space was polluted. What is your choice? This is a deal and I won't force you. Dustless shrugged nonchalantly. Alright, I'll agree to it. Driven by her desire for revenge, Great Si Ming gritted her teeth and agreed decisively. If she rejected, she would definitely be killed by Dustless. She had yet to take revenge on Xing-hun and she did not want to die yet. The next morning, the wind was gentle and the sun was shining brightly. As the sun rose from the east, the sea near the Mulberry Sea was bathed in a golden glow, as if it was plated with a layer of gold. The scenery was beautiful beyond compare. Breathing in the fresh air would make people feel refreshed and full of energy. However, at this moment, in a certain inn, the bedding was rolling and the bed creaked continuously. The creaking sound only stopped when the sun was high up in the sky. At the same time, the exhausted Dustless and the rosy-faced Great Si Ming crawled out of the bedding. A woman is a hero's grave. I'm so tired yesterday. Dustless was half naked and leaning on the pillow. His body was exhausted after working for an entire night. Dustless should have returned to the Little Saint Manor last night but Great Si Ming was willing to make a deal with her. Hence, both of them found an inn and slept in each other's arms. Great Si Ming had also turned from an outsider to one of them. This was the so-called deal. Of course, Dustless had given Great Si Ming other options. However, with her ability, it was impossible for her to complete them. Hence, she could only choose the most direct and quick way. All he had to do was take a nap. How convenient. Humph, goodbye. Great Si Ming crawled out of the bed with a cold face. She walked unsteadily and looked very unnatural. What a stubborn woman. Dustless glanced at Great Si Ming and threw a strange fruit to her. And said, this is the devil's fruit, the magma fruit of the nature. After you eat it, your strength will increase and you will be able to kill Xing-hun. That's it? Hearing this, Great Si Ming looked at Wu Chen suspiciously. The strange fruit in his hand looked neither fish nor fowl. You? Dustless rolled his eyes and did not want to waste his breath. He used the magma fruit's ability, function and some of its weaknesses into Great Si Ming's mind in the form of an illusion. It's no wonder that your strength is so shocking. Now I understand a little. After a few minutes, Great Si Ming, who had escaped from the illusion, looked at Dustless in shock. Her lips were quivering and at the same time, her resistance towards Dustless had disappeared. In every world, the strong were respected. Great Si Ming was initially against Dustless as she felt that being Dong Wang Tai's follower would have a better future. However, after being enlightened by the illusion, she understood that this handsome young man in front of her was the thickest thigh in the world. She had to cling on to him tightly. No wonder Yueshan was so obedient. Great Si Ming sighed. His gaze towards Dustless was filled with respect and even a stubborn fanaticism. His respect for Dustless was far greater than Dong Huang Tai. This was normal. No matter how powerful Dong Huang Tai was, he would not be able to escape the decay of time. After a few years, he would also become a pile of bones. On the other hand, Dustless was different. He would live as long as the heavens. In this case, it shouldn't be a problem to kill Xing Hun. Great Si Ming's eyes were cold as she said softly. Why are you in such a hurry to kill him? Dustless frowned. He could not understand Great Si Ming's thoughts. Since Xing Hun is going to die anyway, what's wrong with killing him in the future? After squeezing him dry, we can let him experience the most painful death in the world. Isn't this more suitable and painful? You're right. Great Si Ming's pretty face froze. After pondering for a few seconds, she nodded in agreement. She suddenly felt that the death method Dustless mentioned was too suitable for Xing Hun, who loved to show off his superiority. I'm going back to the Confucian school for the time being. My current identity in the Confucian school is called Zichen. If there's anything, you can look for me secretly. Remember to report to me every move of the Yinyang school, especially anything related to the 7 mansions of Canglang. Dustless pulled Great Si Ming into his arms and gave her a peck on the cheek. Under her careful care, he put on his clothes and rushed back to the Little Sage Manor through the back door. At the same time, in the Little Sage Manor of the Confucian school, a large number of heavy-armored soldiers from the state of Qin had gathered. Each of them was holding a long spear and had a serious look on their faces. Zhao Gao and the 6 sword slaves had all come uninvited. This included Prime Minister Li Si, Gong Sun Linglong, and many others. Of course, there was another person that Dustless had been paying attention to. The people from the Confucian school, especially the 3 leaders, Fu Nian, Yan Lu, and Zhang Liang, although they looked calm on the surface, there was a hint of worry in the depths of their eyes. These Qin soldiers obviously came with bad intentions. These elite soldiers with awe-inspiring murderous intent were the best way to show off their strength. Although Li Si used to be a disciple of the Confucian school, but now he's sincerely trying to teach the Confucian school a lesson. Fu Nian, Yan Lu, and Zhang Liang exchanged glances. They looked at the 6 sword slaves, Gong Sun Linglong, and the others and frowned slightly. These people were not easy to deal with. Chapter 1836. How ironic. If I remember correctly, although Li Si is a disciple of the legalism school, his teacher is the Confucian school. Moreover, the current Sun Zi is his teacher. In the past, Han Fizi was even his classmate and good friend. Now, he is actually trying to make things difficult for the Confucian school. How lamentable. Dustless, who had just rushed back, happened to see this scene. He couldn't help but sigh. The saying that the world was unpredictable was not wrong at all. Although Li Si had a great relationship with the Confucian school, he now regarded the Confucian school as a thorn in his side and wished to get rid of it. As for the reason, it was probably because of Han Fizi and the 7 mansions of the Azure Dragon. Let's see what's so special about you. After thinking about it, Dustless decisively went over. In any case, he was bored. Of course, Dustless's main attention was focused on an old man. This person's hair and beard were all white, and he seemed to be under pressure as he walked. However, his eyes were bright and full of spirit. Occasionally, a strange light would flash through them. Moreover, although this old man's appearance was like a candle flickering in the wind, his aura was full of vigor and vitality. This old man was Chu Nangong. The Yellowstone Heavenly Book that Dustless valued was also in his hands. Senior and junior brothers, why don't I see teacher? Li Si couldn't help but ask Fu Nian and the others as soon as he stepped into the beautiful Little Saint Manor. This. To be honest, not to mention the Prime Minister, even I, a junior, haven't met Marshal Uncle Sun for many years. Fu Nian bowed slightly and cupped his fists in apology. Is that so? It's not easy to come here. Why don't we go and greet teacher? Li Si suddenly suggested. Fu Nian, Yen Lu, and Zhang Liang looked at each other, and a strange look flashed in their eyes at the same time. As the Prime Minister, Li Si was extremely shrewd. Although he was inextricably linked to the Confucian school, as the Prime Minister, there might be other meanings behind everything he did. Moreover, as everyone knew, Li Si was jealous and cunning. He could even frame his own classmate, Han Fizi. Who knew if he had any ill intentions towards Sun Zi? However, it was obviously impossible for him to refuse Li Si without any excuse, so he had no choice but to bring Li Si to pay a visit to Sun Zi. However, perhaps Li Si was born with bad luck. What happened next was similar to what happened in the original work. Sun Zi refused to meet Li Si without hesitation. At the same time, he said that he did not have a student like Li Si. Li Si's expression changed greatly on the spot, but it just so happened that he couldn't flare up. Sun Zi was his teacher, he couldn't drag Sun Zi out and beat him up, right? The ancient people deeply believed in the principle of heaven, earth, king, family, and teacher. As the representative of the legalists, Li Si was no exception. He could only leave with his head full of bumps. However, Li Si was not someone to be trifled with. He immediately invited the reinforcements, the famous scholar Gongsun Linglong, to debate with the scholarly faction. He swore in his heart that he would make the scholarly faction lose all face. Furthermore, Dustless, Tianming, and Xiaoyu all participated in this debate. However, the development was the same as the original work. Although Gongsun Linglong had the appearance of a fat woman, her mouth was very sharp. Not to mention the scholarly faction's disciples, even Dustless was confused by her words. He secretly gave Gongsun Linglong a thumbs up. This person's eloquence was unparalleled in the world. She could reverse black and white, turning wrong into right. Dustless admitted that he was inferior to her. To deal with a scoundrel like Gongsun Linglong who lied through her teeth, he had to give her a taste of her own medicine. Thus, Tianming was given an important task by Zhang Liang. Within the scholarly faction, the one known as the stupidest disciple was Dustless. Of course, this didn't mean that Wuchen was the worst, but his attainments in learning were really not flattering. He didn't even know the Xiaozhuan characters of the Qin kingdom. But in other aspects, such as riding and fighting, he was second to none in the top. The second to last battle was Tianming. At first, everyone didn't look favorably on Tianming, but the final result was shocking. Under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, Tianming's little universe erupted and he won against Gongsun Linglong. After scaring the white horse away, he brought a black horse over. This made Gongsun Linglong so angry that she wanted to swallow Tianming alive. Because of Tianming, the scholarly faction managed to turn the tables with great difficulty. Trash. Li Si, who was slapped in the face again, didn't move on the surface. However, he was furious in his heart. First, he was slapped in the face by Sun Zi. Then, he was slapped in the face by Tianming. He had lost all face as a minister. Brothers, my useless subordinates have heard that the scholarly faction's attainments in swordsmanship are shocking. This time, they have come to seek advice from the scholarly faction. Pointing at the 6 sword slaves beside Zhao Gao, Li Si finally used his trump card. This doesn't seem appropriate. Without even thinking, the head of the scholarly faction, Fu Nian, directly refused. He had heard of the 6 sword slaves before. They were extremely powerful. Even a first-rate expert like Gunia wouldn't be able to handle them, let alone these useless disciples of the scholarly faction. However, although Fu Nian didn't think it was appropriate, there were some people who wanted to slap Li Si in the face today. Zichen, this time, you will be the one to show them the swordsmanship of the scholarly faction. The person who spoke was Zhang Liang, and the Zichen he spoke of was Dustless. This guy is really trying to make Li Si look bad. Is he deliberately taking revenge on Li Si for tricking Han Fei? Sighing, Dustless finally stood up. After all, he was now a disciple of the scholarly faction. Moreover, it didn't seem like a bad idea to take the opportunity to get close to Chu Nangong. Chapter 1837. Zichen. After everyone heard this address, their eyebrows all straightened at the same time. Their gazes all turned towards the handsome young man who stood up. Zifang, you're messing around. Fu Nian glared fiercely at Zhang Liang. Although in his eyes, Zichen's attainments in martial arts were quite deep, he was still not a match for the 6 sword slaves. After all, the other party was a famous swordsman. Every one of them was a swordsman with decent strength before they joined the Luo Net. After joining the Luo Net and going through a series of hellish training, every one of them became a killing machine. On the other hand, Zichen, the Confucians were in despair. In their view, Zichen was just a 17 or 18-year-old boy. How could he be a match for the 6 sword slaves? This was a classic act of courting death. But everyone looked at the unfathomable smile on Zhang Liang's face and was puzzled. Good, not bad. You're young, but your courage is commendable. Seeing the imposing Zichen, Li Si's eyes lit up. Afraid that the Confucians would go back on their word, he hurriedly said, however, the 6 sword slaves can't bully you with numbers. You can choose one of them as your opponent. 1 against 1 was despicable enough and would be suspected of bullying the weak. If all the 6 sword slaves attacked together, Li Si was sure that he would be mocked by the world. If it's just a simple competition, then it's really too boring. At this moment, Zichen, dustless, suddenly said to Li Si with a smile, Lord Minister, why don't we add a little variety? Oh. Add a little variety? Sounds interesting. Let's hear it. Li Si was immediately interested and said, if it's possible, I'll agree to it. Lord Minister, you're from the school of legalism, and legalism advocates rewarding those who do well and punishing those who do wrong. The final winner should be rewarded. This shouldn't be too much, right? Dustless looked at Chu Nangong and said meaningfully. This makes sense. Everyone looked at each other and thought for a moment before nodding slightly. Since it was a competition, it was normal to have some rewards. What kind of reward does everyone think is suitable? Li Si asked without hesitation. If it was just pure gold, it would be too vulgar, especially for scholars like the Confucians. In their eyes, money was just a worldly possession. Moreover, with money as a competition, they might think that Li Si was deliberately insulting the Confucians. Lord Prime Minister, there is no need to worry. Someone has already prepared the reward for Lord Prime Minister. Dustless spoke again. He looked at Chu Nangong with a smile and said, I heard that Nangong has a peerless book called the Yellowstone Heaven Book. Since Nangong is a hanger-on of the Prime Minister, why don't you use it as a reward? As soon as his voice trailed off, everyone's expression changed drastically. They all stared at Chu Nangong in shock. Nangong, I didn't expect you to have such a treasure. Hearing this, Li Si's face immediately turned ugly. His gaze was somewhat gloomy as he looked at Chu Nangong. The Yellowstone Heavenly Book had already been spread to the point that it was almost divine. In Li Si's opinion, such a good thing should be given to him by Chu Nangong. Who would have thought that this old man would hide it? The Yellow Emperor Shenyuan was one of the ancestors of China and the first ancestor of the humanities. He was known as the ancestor of China along with the Yan Emperor who was born on the shore of the Jiangshui River. He was the leader of the tribal alliance in ancient China. The first owner of the Yellowstone Heavenly Book. The Yellow Emperor Shenyuan obtained the magical power by comprehending the secrets of this Yellowstone Heavenly Book and defeated Qiyu. Jiang Zia assisted King Wu of Zhou in destroying the Shang dynasty. Because of his contributions, he was awarded the title of Qi and became the ancestor of the Qi kingdom in the Zhou dynasty. He was an outstanding statesman, strategist in the history of China. The second owner of the Yellowstone Heavenly Book. His attainment of the Tao and Mount Qi was related to this Yellowstone Heavenly Book. Hearing this, Chu Nangong panicked. Finally, he could no longer stay out of it like before. He glared fiercely at Dustless and hurriedly explained, Lord Prime Minister, you may not know this, but I recently obtained this book. I wanted to give it to you in a few days, but who would have thought that I would participate in the Confucian school? I have a bad memory and forgot. How could he forget such an important thing? Everyone disagreed with this ridiculous excuse. Then, Nan Gong, what are your plans? Li Si looked at Chu Nan Gong meaningfully and dragged his voice as he asked meaningfully. Of course, I'm willing to give it to you with both hands. No, I'm willing to give it to you as the winner. Chu Nan Gong quickly changed his words. If he gave it to Li Si directly, it would be hard to avoid being criticized. It was better to give it to him as the winner of the competition. After all, the person who would get the Yellowstone Heavenly Book in the end would be Li Si. Chu Nan Gong did not think that Dustless could defeat the 6 sword slaves. Such a peerless book is going to fall into Li Si's hands, everyone sighed in their hearts. They were afraid that Li Si would have to give it to Yingjing again. No one could get it. Idiots, the Yellowstone Heavenly Book is mine. You mortals want to take it for yourselves. You overestimate yourselves. Dustless sneered in his heart when he saw this. What is this guy's intention? Zhang Liang's eyes stared at Dustless. His view was very different from others. He believed that the final winner would be Dustless. Within the Confucian school, only Zhang Liang knew the identity of Dustless. Not to mention that he was just one of the 6 sword slaves. Even if all of them besieged Dustless, Zhang Liang believed that the winner would be Dustless. However, before this, when Dustless entered the Confucian school, he deliberately dressed up and changed his appearance. No one knew that this Zichen in front of them was the wanted Dustless. Chapter 1838. This old thing. How dare he hide such an important thing from me? Li Si's expression was calm on the surface, but in his heart, endless ripples were set off. Li Si had been slapped in the face by the Confucian school, and the Prime Minister's stomach was big enough to support a boat. However, even his own people had lied to him. A Confucian school disciple knew that Chu Nan Gong had the Yellowstone Heavenly Book, but Li Si, as the Prime Minister, had no idea. Especially since Chu Nan Gong was his follower, Li Si was furious. I'll deal with you when we get back. Li Si looked away from Chu Nan Gong's head and finally looked at Zhao Gao's head. Zhao Gao, who do you think is more suitable to fight? Remember, this is a sword debate. Don't overdo it. Li Si said with a serious expression. Hearing this, Zhao Gao stood up respectfully. He cupped his fist and reported to Li Si, Prime Minister, since you said don't overdo it, Luanshan will be fine. As soon as he said that, a man covered in yin qi stepped forward. He looked very evil. He wore a mask with a huge spider embedded in it. It was impossible to tell what he looked like. However, anyone could tell that this guy was not a good person. He was definitely not a good person. Not bad. Seeing this, Li Si nodded with satisfaction. An imperceptible smile appeared on his face. The Yellowstone Heavenly Book is mine. Li Si thought so. Of course, Dustless thought so too. Clang, clang, clang. There was a flash of cold light in the void. Luanshan's sword was unsheathed. He pointed at Dustless's throat and said coldly, "Pretty boy, draw your sword. Don't waste my time." This guy, hearing Luanshan's arrogant tone, everyone was unhappy. This Luanshan of the 6 sword slaves was already suspected of bullying the weak. Now, he was shamelessly looking down on others. He was really shameless. On the other hand, Zhao Gao and Li Si did not care. They only cared about the result. It's just a dog. Dustless lifted his lips and mumbled something. Although it was as soft as a mosquito, everyone heard him clearly. That was especially true of Luanshan, who was the closest to Dustless. His eyes looked cold. Everyone else heard him clearly. Chaos God was no exception. Brat, fists and feet are silent. You better be careful. Dustless's words made Chaos God really angry. If Li Si and the others had said something like that, it would have been fine. After all, that was someone else's identity. But dustless. To put it nicely, he was just a Confucian student, yet he dared to look down on him. He simply didn't know how to write the word death. Even though Li Si had told him not to overdo it, bumps were inevitable. It was normal for him to accidentally kill dustless. In the end, he just needed to do a clean job. Plus, Chaos God had made up his mind. Even if he could not kill dustless, he was going to cripple him. He had brought this upon himself. What is he planning to do with the Yellowstone Heaven book? Zhang Liang had been thinking hard. Even though the battle had not started yet, he already had an idea of the result of this competition. Chaos God, one of the 6 sword slaves of the Luo net, was going to lose. Is he going to give it to someone else? Zhang Liang's eyes shone brightly. Dustless did not even know how to read, let alone a book like the Yellowstone Heaven book. Other than giving it to someone else to study, Zhang Liang could not think of any other reason. Draw the sword? I don't have a sword. How can I draw it? Why don't we fight with our bare hands? Dustless shrugged and said helplessly. Taking out the heaven-gathering cloud sword in front of everyone would be too shocking. Take it. It's just a normal competition. No need to be nervous. Just do your best. At that moment, an unexpected person gave his own sword to Dustless. This is Big Brother's Tai. Everyone was in disbelief as they stared at the seemingly crude greatsword. Everyone's breathing became heavier. Especially Zhang Liang and Yen Lu. They were all dumbfounded as they stared at Fu Nian, who had a resolute face. It seems like Big Brother wants Zichen to use Tai. He wants the quality of the sword to be better than Chaos God's. But the second in command of the Confucian school of thought, Yen Lu, shook his head. The most important thing about swordsmanship was the person using the sword. Take Gunia for example. In the original novel, even if his abyss rainbow was broken, he could still fight against an expert like Xing Hun with a wooden sword. Swords are not suitable for me. Dustless glanced at Tai, which Zimu had given him. He saw Zimu looking at him with envy, jealousy, and hatred. He immediately rejected it. Swords were elegant objects. They were suitable for gentlemen like Fu Nian and Zhang Liang. However, they were not suitable for Dustless. Compared to swords, Dustless preferred to use simple and rough knives. Kid, if you want to fight me with your bare hands, I don't mind. Chaos God, one of the 6 sword slaves, said coldly. His sharp longsword was already at Dustless's throat. It seemed like he had no intention of throwing away his sword. So shameless. Seeing this, the Confucian school of thought cursed in their hearts. The 6 sword slaves were terrifying existences in the Jianghu. It was already shameless enough to fight against a Confucian school of thought. Now, they wanted to use their swords to fight against Dustless, who was barehanded. Enough. Even Li Si could not stand it anymore. Chaos God was too shameless. This kid is the one. We can't change him. Li Si looked at Dustless with burning eyes. If Ruguang was replaced by Zhang Liang or Fu Nian, it was uncertain who would win in a 1v1 situation. If Chaos God lost, the Yellowstone Heavenly Book would disappear. Chapter 1839. There was no doubt that even a sword saint like Gunia, or an expert with the number 1 sword in the world, would not be able to gain an advantage against the 6 of them. But if it was a one-on-one fight, what were the chances of victory? Especially against experts like Yen Lu, and Zhang Liang, Li Si did not understand. Why not? It's enough to take care of a Confucian disciple. Li Si frowned as he looked at Dustless and impatiently said, "Finish this quickly. I still have many trivial matters to attend to. I don't have time to waste. Just pick up some trash to deal with him. If we delay, things might change." Dustless was too lazy to waste words. Under everyone's shocked gazes, a ripple appeared in his palm, and a slender katana emerged from thin air. What kind of ability is this? Everyone noticed Dustless's abnormality and they all looked surprised. Everyone was shocked by this move. The unknown Tachi that could cut iron like mud was shining with cold light and was overflowing with an ominous murderous aura. Holding the Tachi in his hand, Wu Chen seemed to have found his original soul in an instant. His whole body radiated a unique temperament. Everyone felt a trace of indescribable oppression. There was a faint evil smile at the corner of his mouth. Everyone frowned slightly when they saw Wu Chen's abnormality. What's wrong with this kid? Li Si could no longer maintain his calm expression. For some reason, when he saw Dustless's faint smile, he felt like an idiot who had been played by a brat. At this moment, Li Si had an ominous premonition that a great disaster was about to befall him. Should I switch people out at the last minute? Li Si hesitated, and a rare cold sweat appeared on his forehead. He had never had such a headache before, even when he had encountered a difficult national matter. But who can I switch out? Li Si shook his head when he saw the cold faces of the 6 sword slaves. He would never do something as shameless as a 6v1. If it were Fu Nian and the others, it would be fine, but to deal with a Confucian disciple, Li Si estimated that he would be labeled as shameless by the world in the future. Should I use her? Retracting his gaze from the 6 sword slaves, Li Si looked at the beautiful girl on his right. The girl had a head of long and thin purple hair. Her face was covered by a veil, so it was impossible to tell what she looked like. The girl's eyes were extremely tranquil and serene, unmoving. Her gem-like eyes were as calm as an ancient well, giving people the feeling that even if the sky were to collapse, it would have nothing to do with her. This person was young Arbiter Ming of the school of Yin Yang. It's even more inappropriate to expect her to fight. At the same time, Li Si retracted his gaze from young Master Ming. He was a shrewd man. Although the Yin Yang school and the Qin state were allies, they were still 2 different people. The importance of the Yellowstone Heavenly Book was self-evident. Who knew if the school of Yin Yang would be moved? It was rumored that after comprehending the Heavenly Book, one would obtain inconceivable power. Wasn't this what the school of Yin Yang pursued? Why does he look so familiar? Although Xiao Ming looked emotionless on the surface, a faint ripple had appeared in her heart. She kept staring at Dustless from the corner of her eyes. Although Dustless had disguised himself, Xiao Ming couldn't help but think of a wanted person, Dustless. No matter how a person disguised himself or changed his appearance, his aura could never be changed. I remember that Xing Han was the one who came to find trouble with the school of Yin Yang. I didn't expect it to be her this time. Dustless also stole a few glances at Xiao Ming from the corner of his eyes. He couldn't help but sigh. Even without Xing Han, the Yin Yang school still sent young Master Ming. Of course, the main reason was Dustless. Xing Han was severely injured by him last time. Even if he was lucky and didn't die, he probably had 1 foot in the door of hell and was still recuperating. Therefore, it was young Master Ming's turn to find trouble with the school of Yin Yang. But this girl is really beautiful at such a young age. Dustless muttered to himself. The veil covering young Master Ming's face was as good as non-existent to Dustless. He could see her beautiful face with one glance. Kid, go and die. Just as Dustless stole glances at young Master Ming, Wanshan finally couldn't hold it in anymore. It was just a fight, but Dustless's hesitation had already ignited the flames in his heart. Experts usually wouldn't get angry easily, but once they did, the consequences would be extremely severe. Wanshan was one such example. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The sharp sword light went straight for Dustless's eyes. It was extremely tricky. Be careful. He's too despicable. The school of Yin Yang reminded loudly, cursing Wanshan for being shameless and despicable. He launched a sneak attack without saying anything. This guy's shamelessness wasn't any worse than Li Si's. Despicable? Hearing this, Zhao Gao's face was filled with mockery. He glanced at the school of Yin Yang and snorted disdainfully. These people were destined to be gentlemen. That was why they would be wiped out in the end. Too slow. Dustless's unbelievably calm tone popped out of his mouth. Then, the tachi in his hand swept out, and a weak sword attack emerged. This scene was too fast. It happened in the blink of an eye. Only the top experts could see it. Pfft! Luanshan suddenly felt a piercing pain on his cheek. It was as if someone had torn it apart. It was extremely painful. Then, drops of blood kept dripping down. How boring, ignoring everyone's shocked eyes, Dustless said, "It's not too late to admit defeat after a few rounds. Who would have thought that you would lose everything in an instant?" Chapter 1840. He lost just like that? Seeing this, Li Si's eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. The dignified prime minister looked like a country bumpkin at this moment. He had completely lost his image. Of course, it was not just Li Si. Everyone's expression was as exaggerated as his. The only people who remained calm were Zhang Liang, Tianming, and Xiao Yu, who knew Dustless's identity. Impossible, he lost. Zhao Gao saw the scary wound on Chaos God's face. He could not believe what he was seeing. He screamed. "This is the truth." Dustless glanced at him in boredom. He did not have a good impression of this eunuch. "Prime Minister, should you announce the outcome now?" Staring at Li Si, who was in a daze and seemed to have lost his soul, Wuchen deliberately dragged his voice. Hearing this, the corners of Li Si's mouth twitched twice. Thinking about how the cooked duck had flown away, he felt especially depressed in his heart. If it was an ordinary thing, then so be it. With Li Si's status, he wouldn't care. But the importance of the Yellowstone Heavenly Book was not inferior to a great secret like the Azure Dragon's 7 Mansions in Li Si's heart. The Yellowstone Heavenly Book was a unique book. Everyone who was fated with it would have extraordinary achievements in the end. The Yellow Emperor Shenyuan and Jiang Taigong were the same. Li Si wanted to have it even in his dreams. However, sadly, Luanshan, who he trusted, was killed by the enemy in one strike. Li Si's heart was suddenly filled with despair. He glared at Zhao Gao with fire in his eyes. It was all his fault for choosing Luanshan to fight Dustless. "It's none of my business." Seeing this, Zhao Gao wanted to cry but had no tears. He did not expect Dustless to be so abnormal. "Humph, kid, you broke the rules. This round does not count. It should be annulled." At this moment, Zhao Gao suddenly had an idea and threatened, "Did you forget what the Prime Minister said? You used a sword to injure someone. This is a serious crime." "That's right." Hearing this, Li Si took the opportunity to put on airs and shouted, "Why did you deliberately injure someone? How shameless!" Seeing this, all the Confucian disciples glared angrily, including Fu Nian and Zhang Liang. Even Yan Lu, who rarely got angry, frowned. Although it's said to stop when it's appropriate, bumps and bruises are unavoidable. He was the one who said that. Dustless pointed at Luanshan, who had a bloody scar on his cheek, and said lazily, "Also, he released a murderous aura towards me before. Why didn't the magistrate say that he broke the rules?" Zhao Gao was the prefectural magistrate of Zhongsha Prefecture. Hearing that, Zhao Gao was speechless. He looked at Luanshan and cursed, "Useless piece of trash. This is what you get for looking down on others." Damn it, Chaos God was embarrassed and angry. He touched the wound on his face. Just as he was about to raise his sword to fight, Dustless said something that made him put down his hand. "You've already lost. If you point your sword at me again, I'll take it as an act of seeking death. Rice bucket, back off." Li Si glared at Luanshan with his cold eyes. His expression changed rapidly, and finally, he acted shamelessly. "Sigh, I'm old and my memory is not good. I forgot to say before that this competition is a best of 3. Humph, all the rules are set by you. What else is there to compete?" Fu Nian, who couldn't bear it anymore, snorted and said, "Since that's the case, our Confucian school admits defeat." 2 out of 3 matches it is. Do as you please. Dustless immediately expressed a different opinion and refuted Fu Nian's opinion. He had finally found an excuse to snatch the Yellowstone Heavenly Book. How could he give up just because of Fu Nian's words? Moreover, what could a best of 3 change? He would still lose. Since it's a best of 3, then the next round. An unexpected beautiful figure came out to disturb the situation. Her elegant purple hair was like a fairy descending from the sky. Her light voice caused everyone to be startled, and they were unable to extricate themselves from her intoxication. It's you? Dustless frowned. He helplessly found that the person who challenged him was young Master Ming of the School of Yin Yang. Sure enough, the School of Yin Yang also wants the Yellowstone Heavenly Book. Li Si's face turned ugly. The School of Yin Yang had a high position in Ing Zheng's heart. Once the Yellowstone Heavenly Book was taken away by the School of Yin Yang, it was almost impossible to make them spit it out. We were the ones who lost this competition, so we'll win it back. The rest of the slaves of the 6 swords suggested to Zhao Gao. Unexpectedly, Zhao Gao just asked them to get lost. You're just a few pieces of trash. How can you be brave when you're just a general of a defeated army? Shut up. In the end, this matter had nothing to do with Zhao Gao. However, the slaves of the 6 swords had lost and caused Li Si to hold a grudge against him. It was especially sad and felt like a fish in the moat. Sending a little girl to fight me? How can I do that? Dustless deliberately scratched his head and put on an embarrassed look. You feel embarrassed? That's fine. Since you don't have the heart to fight, then you should take the initiative to quit and give the Yellowstone Heavenly Book to me. It was rare for young Master Ming, who was usually quiet, to be talkative. What a joke. How can I give this thing away so easily? Hearing this, Dustless scolded in his heart and rolled his eyes. If it was an ordinary thing, he wouldn't mind giving it away. However, he was determined to get the Yellowstone Heavenly Book and the 7 constellations of the Azure Dragon. If you don't want to, then cut the crap and do it quickly. The steam in Great Master Ming's body was rolling. With a light tap of her hand, a genuine energy vortex appeared. Then, countless green leaves were under her control and were easily sucked into the vortex in her palm. Then, under everyone's surprised gaze, a long whip made entirely of green leaves was formed in an instant. Chapter 1841. Young Arbiter Ming looks like she's only in her teens. She's probably not much older than Xing Hun. Dustless nodded in admiration. He looked at Li Si and asked, Minister, this is the last time, right? There won't be a best of 5 rule again, right? Li Si was embarrassed by Dustless's question. To be honest, he had lost all his face as a minister by acting shamelessly in front of a Confucian disciple. Brat, how dare you? Zhao Gao's eyes turned cold. He had felt that Dustless was strange since the beginning. He didn't seem like a simple Confucian disciple. The Confucian school pursued the path of a gentleman. They usually convinced people with reason and wouldn't bully people with power. Therefore, the swordsmanship used by the Confucian school was filled with righteousness. However, the moment Wu Chen held the blade, his temperament changed drastically. The overbearing aura of pointing the sword at the sky made everyone feel small and insignificant. This kind of overbearing swordsmanship was definitely not from the Confucian school. This Si Chen is indeed a little strange. Zhao Gao wasn't the only one who saw the problem. The head of the Confucian school, Fu Nian, also saw the abnormality. Most of the Confucian school only knew how to use swords. Sabers were a relatively crude weapon. It didn't match the elegance of the Confucian school and conflicted with the teachings of the Confucian school. All in all, the Confucian school basically used swords. However, in Dustless's eyes, sabers and swords were no different. A weapon that could kill was the best. This is the last time. If you win, the Yellowstone Heavenly Book will be yours, Li Si said expressionlessly. However, he squinted his eyes and looked at Dustless. Brat, how dare you trick me? Just wait and see. Li Si knew that he had been tricked. The culprit was this seemingly harmless young man in front of him. Swish swish swish. As soon as Li Si finished speaking, young Arbiter Ming launched a fatal attack. The green whip contained an unimaginable sharpness and swept towards Dustless's face. So weak. Dustless blinked his eyes and stared at the long whip coming from the left. He raised the tachi in his hand and slashed it down. Poochie. The seemingly extraordinary green leaf whip was exceptionally fragile under the overwhelming power, and was brutally cut apart by Dustless. Such strength. Xiaoxi Ming's nose slightly wrinkled. Dustless could clearly see the girl's surprise even with the veil covering her face. Great Si Ming and Moon God are already my people. Let alone you. Dustless laughed in his heart. Moon God's position was higher than Great Si Ming's, but she was still one of his people, let alone young Si Ming in front of him. I'll just make your Yinyang school my own people and turn Dongwang Tai into a general without an army. Dustless chuckled in his heart. The corners of his lips curled up slightly. It was as if he could already see Dongwang Tai's pitiful look when he was betrayed after knowing the truth. Humph. Seeing Dustless's silly smile, Xiaoxi Ming's eyes flashed dangerously. How dare he think of other things while fighting with her? Wasn't this looking down on her? Shoo shoo shoo. Xiaoxi Ming waved her hand lightly. True qi gushed out, and a weak whirlpool quietly appeared on her palm again. Buzz buzz buzz, the leaves that were cut off by Dustless floated up again. Following Xiaoxi Ming's will, they all flew towards Dustless at lightning speed. Shoo shoo shoo. The dense green leaves emitted a dangerous sharpness, refracting a gloomy cold light. Every green leaf was like a blade. Poochie. 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 In the blink of an eye, the floating green leaf pierced through Dustless's body at an extremely fast speed. Moreover, an extremely bloody scene unfolded. They pierced through Dustless's chest, and one could even see the white bones inside. Puke 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 puke. Having never seen such a bloody scene, the disciples of the school of Moism started to vomit. You killed someone. Seeing this, Fu Nian was furious. Seeing Dustless's miserable face, his anger exploded. He knew that he had been patient enough, but he didn't expect the school of Yinyang to be so bold. Killing a Confucian disciple in front of the Confucian school of thought, wasn't this slapping the Confucian school of thought's face? Little Saint Zhuang Wuxin participated in the Jianghu feud, but you are too presumptuous. Fu Nian's cold gaze swept across young Judge Ming. The Tai sword in Fu Nian's hand had already been unsheathed, and a fatal pressure spread out. Now that the Confucian disciple was killed, he would be laughed at if he, the school of thought, continued to remain silent. However, Xiaoxi Ming remained unmoved. Seeing Wu Chen's body, she couldn't help but feel a little strange. Her mouth moved slightly. Just as Xiaoxi Ming was about to open her mouth, her beautiful eyes suddenly shrank. Game over. At this moment, a straight tachi was pressed against Xiaoxi Ming's throat. Aren't you dead? Li Si couldn't help but ask in surprise. When he saw Dustless's miserable state, he also felt nauseous. However, when Li Si looked at Dustless's body again, it had already turned into a piece of destroyed wood. Dead? Hearing this, Dustless smiled. To put it bluntly, it was just a random clone technique, and it wasn't Dustless's real body. Lord Xianggui is right, but the dead me is just a piece of wood. You, looking down at the tachi on her throat, Xiaoxi Ming clenched her fists tightly, looking rather unwilling. There's always someone better. Although your school of Yinyang isn't bad, it's not invincible. Especially you've chosen the wrong opponent. Admit defeat. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.